Flash! For decades, ever since the walleye has become a popular game fish, new innovations have surfaced and resurfaced as the hot technique of the day. Tackle manufacturers and outdoor writers gladly capitalized on the angler's fascination with the latest killer bait, each of which admittedly has its own place and time. But could it be that amidst all the hoopla and hype, some fundamental fishing truths have been relegated to the back pages of the walleye angler's consciousness? Let's join someone who's seen it all and who has a definite opinion on the age-old question, what is the greatest walleye lure?
Newfangled contraptions? Huh, these young whippersnappers think they know it all. Why, I've forgotten more than any two of them will ever learn about fishing for walleyes. Yeah, I remember the time. It was spring of '36. Or was that fall of '48? When was that? Oh, never mind. I was catching walleyes on split shot, hammered onto homemade streamer flies, first jigs. Oh yeah, smart aleck young folks, take my grandson Dan, happens to work for this here fancy magazine. Don't know how many times I had to unhook a jig from trees, docks, shirts, pants, or ears. Back when he was a kid. Now Dan thinks he can come in here and tell me how it's done. Kid loves to fish for walleyes though. Uses crankbaits, bottom bouncers, trails baits behind high-tech boards. He's into blade baits and jigging spoons and every type of spinner rig you could imagine. But I'll tell you one thing, for my money, if I had to pick just one lure to fish walleyes with, all waters, all seasons, it would be the jig. That's right, jigs. Seems like folks can make anything complicated, even jig fishing. But there are some basic methods that work fine in most situations. I was just reading an article about jig retrieves by Al Lindner. Yeah, Al's another young hotshot, still wet behind the ears. But Al's a lot sharper than most.
Father, lift her up, lift her up. Huh? Ooh.
That's a horse. That's what we came here for.
Man, that's a nice fish. I don't know what she weighs, but she's pretty heavy, huh? You know what? I'm gonna share with you an In-Fisherman tip that has helped us catch big fish like this anywhere in the country. I'm gonna put her back. You go back. Hey, what I want to share with you today is a presentation technique that has helped us at the In-Fisherman catch virtually every kind of fish that swims, largemouth, smallmouth, big walleye like that, northern muskies, crappies, tarpon, permit. It works in lakes, rivers, or reservoirs, spring, summer, or fall, all over the country for any kinds of fish. Now that's got to have your attention. There's only one thing that you could do that with. It's a jig. And a technique of jig fishing, a simple presentation that is so important that it'll work for you anywhere, any time of the year with a few variables. That's what Ron and I are going to talk about today. Understanding presentation with a jig.
It's just, I think it's just another, of course, deeper, just another fish.
The basic retrieve on a jig is the important thing you have to understand. The basic retrieve. I cast it out, let it sit to the bottom. Now I'm just lifting it, letting it fall back. You see your line slack, you're there. You lift it, let it fall back. The lift becomes the attraction. The trigger is when it falls back. The lift is the attraction. The trigger is when it falls back. You lift and you drop. The whole thing is to keep control. That jig, the weight of the jig becomes your control factor. In fact, the weight of the jig is the most important part of the jig. Color and dressings come into play too, and we'll talk about that a little later. But the control factor is the weight of the jig, and it affects the rising and dropping speed tremendously. There's times you want that jig to rip real quick and fall real fast, and then there's times you want it almost to swim and dip real slow. We'll be covering these points, but there's always one thing that is a must. After you lift the jig up, you always follow it back, watch your line until it hits the bottom. You lift it back up, follow it back, until it hits the bottom. Line watching is a critical part of jig fishing.
The basic lifting dropping technique could either be worked horizontally or vertically. Al is kind of casting, retrieving, kind of bouncing it, while I'm kind of fishing up and down. It's still lifting, dropping, except that he's sort of doing it this way and I'm sort of doing it this way.
When you fish a jig horizontally is when the fish are scattered across flats. When they're on tight or drop-offs, real tight like ledges or down drop-offs and schooled together, that's when you go to a vertical approach.
It's just, I think it's just another fish.
They're everywhere, they're everywhere. Ooh, look at the size of this one for a sauger, huh? Oh, man. We will end up, by the end of today, catching, I don't know how many. You want a big minnow there. Catching, 60, 70, maybe 100 fish. We're running out of minnows. 100 fish days. Lots of people think those are fish stories. They are not rare. And some of the 100 fish days that I had in my life were all done jig fishing. Okay, oh man, Ronald, I can't catch fish any faster than this. We're doing a little vertical jigging here again. I found some fish a little further on a drop-off. Rule of thumb is when you're up on flat areas, you fish horizontally. When you get fish tight on these drop-offs, you go to these vertical presentations. You know, shape has a lot to do with a jig, too. The most basic jig design is the simple ball head jig, which can be worked both horizontally or vertically, but nothing is perfect. Ball heads have a tendency to get snagged because they fall over once they're dropped to the bottom. Stand-up jig modifications, such as a competition head, a drip lip, or the Foxy bullet head, minimize snags because they don't fall over once they hit bottom. Alternate swimming jig designs have also been incorporated. The Whistler has a spinner which slows the bait's rise and fall. The Jiggler rocks from side to side when it's pulled horizontally through the water. Jig design has improved immensely in the past 5 years, and modifications in jig design on both ends of this basic spectrum help fishermen fish more effectively. Big fish. Big fish. Oh, I'm gonna need a net, Ronald. It's one of them 8, 9 pounders again. Oh.
Is that a netter?
No, I'll get this one.
You're gonna get her?
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa. She's coming around, Ronald. She's a pretty good fish, Ronald. Ooh, look at that. When they pound like that, you know you got some size. Oh, boy, she pounded. There she is. Oh, Ronald. Look at this puppy. Whoa. Whoa. Hey, folks. Look at that one, huh? Ronald, we've been really having a field day pounding some nice fish. I'll tell you what, folks. If there's anything that comes close to the magic lure, it's a jig. For any kind of fish that swims.